Very talented musicians who happen to also sing well, which is a nice combination when that can happen. I give you Mr. Mike and the Holtz. Thanks for being here.
What's up?
Give it up for Pierre Robert.
Have you ever noticed how some voices just stay with you? Like they become part of your life's background music? For people in Philadelphia, that voice was Pierre Robert. For over 40 years, Pierre wasn't just a DJ on 93.3 WMMR. He was the heartbeat of the city. He wasn't there to just announce songs or fill time between commercials. He was there to connect. Whether you were half asleep on your way to class, sitting in rush hour traffic, or just trying to get through a tough day, Pierre's cheerful, "Great day in the morning" made things feel a little lighter. But on October 29th, 2025, that familiar voice went quiet. Pierre Robert passed away peacefully at 70. The news spread fast, and the reaction was immediate. The city that had always been so loud, so full of life, suddenly felt quiet. Fans, listeners, and even people who'd never met him flooded social media with memories. One fan wrote, "Pierre wasn't a DJ to me, he was my morning friend." Another said, "His voice was the soundtrack to every part of my life." And honestly, that captures him perfectly. Pierre didn't just play rock, he lived it. His story didn't begin in Philly, though. It started all the way across the country, in Truckee, California, back in 1955. Picture this, a small mountain town with big skies and open space. The perfect place for a dreamer to start imagining a bigger world. Pierre grew up in the 1960s, a time when rock music wasn't just background noise. It was a revolution. It meant something. It stood for freedom, truth, rebellion. All the things young Pierre believed in. He once said that rock taught him how to listen, how to care, how to believe in something bigger than himself. And that mindset became his compass for life. Before Philly ever heard his voice, Pierre had already been making waves on the West Coast. He worked at 94.9 KSAN FM in San Francisco, one of the earliest progressive rock stations. KSAN was raw and fearless. DJs could play what they loved, say what they felt, and treat listeners like equals. That kind of creative chaos shaped Pierre. He learned that authenticity mattered way more than perfection. But then, in the 1980s, KSAN changed. Corporate radio took over. Rock was out, urban country was in, and Pierre, well, he couldn't pretend. He refused to fake enthusiasm for music he didn't believe in. So he did something brave and a little crazy. He packed up his entire life into his beat-up 1970 Volkswagen van, which he nicknamed Minerva, and drove east. No plan, no job lined up, just faith that music would somehow lead him to the right place. And it did. By pure chance, Pierre ended up in Philadelphia. Out of curiosity, or maybe fate, he dropped off a demo tape at WMMR, the city's legendary rock station. They turned him down, no call back. Most people would have taken that as a sign to move on. But Pierre, he stayed. He picked up a job at a vegetarian cafe on South Street called Essen. It was while working there that he got a strange piece of advice from a palm reader. She told him, "You're going to get a letter very soon. It'll change everything." And unbelievably, she was right. Days later, a letter showed up from WMMR's station manager, Joe Bonadonna. It offered him a small on-air opportunity, not a full-time job, not a glamorous offer, just a chance. And Pierre took it. That one moment, one letter, one leap of faith didn't just change Pierre's life. It changed Philadelphia's radio history forever. Because from that point on, Pierre Robert wasn't just part of WMMR, he was WMMR. His voice became part of the city's heartbeat. He was there through blizzards and parades, heartbreaks and celebrations. His shows weren't about playlists, they were about people. He made the audience feel seen, like every shout-out, every laugh, and every song choice mattered. And maybe that's what made him so unforgettable. In a world that often feels automated and distant, Pierre never forgot how to be human. Even now, as Philly mourns him, that's the legacy he leaves behind. Not just decades of great music, but the reminder that sincerity still matters, that kindness and passion still connect people, even through static and speakers. Pierre Robert didn't treat listeners like an audience. He treated them like family. Every broadcast felt like an old friend checking in, not a performer putting on a show. When he said, "Greetings, citizens," you knew something good was about to happen. People stopped mid-commute or mid-conversation because that line, that voice, meant warmth, humor, and a soundtrack for whatever you were feeling that day. Pierre didn't just play rock music, he celebrated it. His daily segments, like the coffee break marathon or the workforce blocks, weren't just playlists, they were traditions. Listeners didn't just tune in to hear songs, they tuned in to feel connected. And even though the shows had a set schedule, Pierre's famous Pierre Standard Time meant things rarely ended when they were supposed to. But no one minded. That unpredictability was part of the magic. He wasn't polished or flashy, he was real. While most DJs chased trends and polished sound bites, Pierre slowed things down. He didn't rush through songs or over-edit his commentary. He took his time, savoring each track like a story worth telling. He'd laugh mid-sentence, get lost in a guitar solo, or pause just long enough for you to feel the weight of what he was saying. That authenticity, you couldn't fake it, and that's why people trusted him. And Pierre was full of quirks, the kind that made him even more lovable. In a city obsessed with sports, he famously admitted he couldn't keep track of any team. He'd just call them the boys in blue, even when they weren't wearing blue at all. Philly fans didn't roast him for it. They adored him for staying true to himself. He was the city's gentle rebel, wearing denim jackets and kindness like badges of honor. What set Pierre apart wasn't his encyclopedic music knowledge, though he had plenty of that. It was his heart. He saw music as a bridge, a way for people to feel seen, heard, and understood. When you called into his show, you weren't just a voice on the line, you were a citizen, part of something bigger than yourself. That greeting, "Greetings, citizens," us became more than a catchphrase. It was a promise that you belonged here. Even as the world around him shifted, from vinyl to CDs, from iPods to Spotify, Pierre stayed constant. When other radio stations became automated or filled with ads, he kept it human. His secret? He didn't talk at people. He talked with them. He made radio feel like a living conversation, and he never lost his spark. Even into his late 60s, Pierre came into the WMMR studio every day with the same excitement he had in 1981. In early 2024, he even signed a new multi-year deal with the station. He wasn't ready to slow down because for him, this wasn't just a career. It was his life's dialogue with Philadelphia. Off the air, Pierre lived exactly how you'd imagine a rock DJ would, peacefully, freely, and unapologetically himself. Long hair, gentle eyes, denim jackets. He looked like a time traveler from a 1970s album cover, and his beat-up Volkswagen van, Minerva, became almost as iconic as he was. It wasn't just a vehicle, it was a symbol of everything Pierre stood for: simplicity, adventure, and soul. But what people remember most isn't the voice, or even the music. It's the kindness. Pierre didn't need to be the loudest in the room to make people feel seen. He had this calm energy, the kind that made strangers feel like old friends. Whether you met him at a concert, a fundraiser, or just bumped into him on South Street, he'd stop, smile, and listen. He volunteered constantly, from AIDS walk events to local food drives. Not for attention, but because helping people was just what he did. He believed kindness wasn't something you talk about. It's something you do. Pierre Robert's story isn't just about radio. It's about connection in a world that's forgotten how to slow down. He showed that sincerity doesn't go out of style, and that sometimes the quietest voices echo the longest. Philadelphia didn't just lose a DJ, it lost one of its loudest hearts. But every time a rock anthem plays, every time someone says "great day" in the morning, you can almost hear him smiling, still behind the mic, still spreading warmth through the static. On October 29th, 2025, that voice went quiet. No flashing headlines, no big announcement. Just a peaceful goodbye from a man who spent his entire life making sure the rest of us felt seen, heard, and understood. Pierre didn't need drama to make an impact. His whole legacy was built on something much rarer: authenticity. Even after he passed, you could still feel him everywhere. In the hum of a car radio, in the background music of a corner diner, in that one lyric that somehow hits harder than it should. Pierre wasn't just part of Philadelphia's sound. He was the sound. He never wanted to be famous in the celebrity sense. He didn't crave billboards, cameras, or magazine covers. He once said the spotlight felt too harsh. He preferred the warmth of connection instead. His family wasn't made of distant relatives or industry elites. It was made of the people who tuned in every day, the co-workers who laughed beside him in the studio, and the fans who felt like they knew him even if they never met. People who worked with him say Pierre had this calm energy, the kind that could melt tension in any room. You could have deadlines flying, phones ringing, chaos all around. And somehow Pierre's presence made it all feel manageable. He never raised his voice or tried to take over. He just listened. And in a world where everyone's shouting to be heard, that made him powerful. He didn't tell people what to think. He wanted to understand what they felt. That's why he built such a loyal connection with his audience. He wasn't a voice talking at them. He was a friend talking with them. In today's media landscape, that kind of genuine empathy is almost extinct. Pierre never needed to compete because he wasn't pretending to be anyone else. When most people talk about net worth, they're thinking in numbers. But if you'd asked Pierre what he was worth, he probably would have laughed and said something like, "Depends on how many records I've got left to play." Sure, reports estimate his wealth between $1 and $2 million, but that was never the point. His real fortune lived in the memories he created, the concerts, the thank you notes from fans, the music shared with strangers who became friends. You can't measure that in dollars. Pierre's value wasn't in what he owned. It was in what he gave. And what he gave was Philadelphia. He carried that city through everything, from wars and elections to heartbreaks and late-night drives home. When the world felt uncertain, his steady, joyful voice reminded people that some things, like kindness, music, and hope, never go out of style. Even the biggest artists felt it. Bands like the Hooters and the Grateful Dead saw Pierre not as a radio host, but as one of their own. Someone who understood what rock and roll really stood for: community, truth, and freedom. One of his most iconic moments came when he presented the Grateful Dead with a flag at their 50th show at the Spectrum. It wasn't some publicity stunt. It was one soul saying thank you to another for keeping the fire alive. And then there was Minerva 2, Pierre's beloved Volkswagen bus. That van wasn't just a vehicle, it was his spirit on wheels. Fans knew it as well as they knew his voice. When it finally broke down, the people of Philadelphia refused to let it die. Listeners, friends, and sponsors came together to restore it. Not because it was a van, but because it was Pierre. Keeping it alive felt like keeping him alive. His accomplishments went far beyond the airwaves. In 2019, he was inducted into the Philadelphia Music Walk of Fame, a well-deserved honor for someone who shaped the city's sound. 2 years later, WMMR renamed their main studio the Pierre Robert Studio, a permanent reminder that his voice will always echo there. What made Pierre special was how he belonged to a different era, a time when radio wasn't just noise between ads, it was connection. He didn't obsess over ratings or playlists, he cared about people. He believed that one perfectly timed song could change the way you saw your whole day, and that belief became his legacy. When he passed, that belief hit harder than ever. The morning after his death, WMMR played a tribute montage. Clips of Pierre laughing, reminiscing, introducing songs, telling stories only he could tell. And then for 1 minute, the station went silent. Just silence. But it wasn't empty. It was full of memory, gratitude, and love. Across Philadelphia, people stopped. Some cried, some smiled, but everyone felt it. Because it wasn't just a DJ who was gone. It was a friend, one who had kept them company for more than 40 years. In that silence, it was almost like you could still hear him. That familiar, warm voice saying, "Great day in the morning." Pierre's story was never about chasing fame or fortune. It was about staying true to yourself. Even when the world changes around you, he believed in kindness, in slowing down, in listening when others didn't. He believed music could make people better. And maybe that's why his story doesn't really end. Because you can still find him in the hum of a radio, in the strum of a guitar, in a quiet Philly sunrise when someone says those same words he made famous. Pierre Robert didn't just play the music, he became it. And because of that, he'll never stop playing.